In 1480 Romania, Prince Vlad lives happily with his beloved wife, Elizabetha. As a token of their devotion, Vlad gifts her a delicate music box. Their peace is soon broken when knights arrive, summoning Vlad to the battlefield. With the enemy drawing near, Vlad orders his men to escort Elizabetha to another castle for her safety. Before departing, he seeks the Pope's blessing and prays for divine protection over her. Deep in the forest, Elizabetha's escort is ambushed. An enemy archer hidden among the trees swiftly fells 2 guards. The remaining soldiers rally to defend her, urging her to ride ahead. Meanwhile, Vlad sets fire to oil barrels, creating a blazing barrier to contain the enemy. A brutal clash erupts, blood soaking the ground as warriors fall on both sides. Yet Vlad's forces fight with unyielding ferocity, slowly gaining the upper hand. At last, Vlad and his men confront the enemy king, displaying their foes' severed heads upon their spears in grim triumph. But the victory is cut short when Vlad learns of the assault on his wife. Without hesitation, he rushes to find her, while Elizabetha, pursued relentlessly by enemy soldiers, rides desperately for her life. The Forest of Wolves is a deadly place, its snow concealing thousands of hidden bear traps. As Elizabetha is escorted through, 2 soldiers fall victim to the steel jaws beneath the white cover, while she manages to skillfully avoid them. Her luck falters when her horse is caught, throwing her violently to the ground. Enemies close in, probing the snow cautiously with their swords to avoid the same fate. Desperate to escape, Elizabetha stumbles back, only to trigger a trap herself. Vlad arrives moments later, but his horse too is claimed by the merciless devices. Undeterred, he presses forward on foot, cutting down 2 soldiers with brutal efficiency. He hurls his sword at another enemy advancing on Elizabetha, but in a tragic twist, the blade pierces her as well. Stricken, Vlad rushes to her side, weeping as he holds her in his arms while she slips away. Grief soon curdles into rage. Vlad returns to the Pope, railing against God for failing to protect Elizabetha despite all the bloodshed he had offered in his name. Begging for a miracle, he demands her return, but the Pope can offer none. Enraged, Vlad seizes a crucifix and drives it into the holy man, declaring that he will renounce God unless Elizabetha is restored to him. As if in response, the wind howls through the church and the statue of Christ begins to weep. Vlad, defiant, stands tall with pride, while his horrified men drag him from the sacred hall. For centuries later, in France, a priest visits a psychiatric clinic to meet with Dr. D'Ant, who warns him of a fragile case so grave that even the Queen of England is concerned. They walk through bleak corridors filled with the cries of the deranged, where patients thrash in madness and doctors restrain them with pitiless force. Beyond a steel door and down a dim tunnel, the priest and Dr. D'Ant enter a sealed chamber where Maria is bound in heavy chains. She is an Italian woman, once engaged to the Queen's great-nephew. Their wedding had been arranged on the family estate after Maria refused to marry in a church. Yet when the groom invited a bishop to bless the union, Maria fell into a violent hysteria. Her records, however, raise even darker questions. She was reportedly born in 1759, which would make her more than 130 years old. Her unnatural age and her violent reaction to the sacred suggest to her captors that she might be something unholy. As the men debate, Maria stirs awake, hissing like an animal. The priest steps closer, studying her face, then notices her elongated fangs. He declares her a vampire, the first ever captured alive. He explains that such creatures can walk by day, but cannot endure direct sunlight. To demonstrate, he opens a shutter, and a shaft of light scorches her flesh. When he presses a crucifix before her, it erupts into flame. To compel her further, the priest slices the finger of D'Ant's assistant, Simon, letting drops of blood fall onto Maria's lips. Her body quivers, hunger taking hold. Inspecting her neck, the priest reveals the bite marks that condemned her to this cursed state. He explains that the church has battled vampires for centuries, yet the origin of the first remains unknown. Desperate for more blood, Maria whispers that her master is the first, the ancient prince who created her. And soon, he will come to the city in search of his princess. That same night, far away, notary Jonathan rides through a darkened forest. The coach lurches to a halt, and the driver nervously declares he can go no further. The wolves will soon prowl. He abandons Jonathan with his luggage, a torch, and a crucifix before fleeing into the night. Left alone, Jonathan presses on by foot, fending off distant howls with a flickering flame. At last, he reaches a looming castle. The iron gate creaks open at his approach, only to slam shut behind him as he enters. Another door swings wide of its own accord, guiding him into a chamber. On the balcony, a figure waits, then vanishes in a sudden flash of lightning. Startled, Jonathan turns, only to find an old man silently standing behind him. With a gesture, the stranger casts the torch aside and floods the room with light. He introduces himself, Prince Vlad, Count Dracula. At the dining table, Jonathan eagerly devours the lavish food, though Dracula takes none. With a flick of his hand, the Count slides a dish toward his guest, a gesture Jonathan dismisses as sleight of hand. As Jonathan rifles through his bag for documents, Dracula idly impales a rat with a fork, then crushes it in his palm, letting its blood stream into his cup before drinking it with relish. Jonathan explains that the county he represents seeks to purchase Dracula's old Parisian abbey to convert it into a hospital. While reaching for more papers, Jonathan drops the crucifix the driver gave him. Dracula asks if he is a believer. Jonathan admits he is not, and explains its origin. With a sharp flick of his wrist, Dracula hurls the crucifix into the fire, then, in the blink of an eye, appears at Jonathan's side. His voice is calm but commanding as he declares, "It is time for bed." Jonathan is escorted to his chambers, where Dracula warns him never to leave the room at night. Once alone again, the Count returns to the dining hall, filling the air with somber music before commanding a stone gargoyle to keep watch over his guest. Curious, Jonathan explores the chamber and finds a heavy old book chronicling the castle's history. Within its pages, he sees an illustration of a young Vlad, though the prince's portrait has been torn away. Elsewhere, the priest visits Henry, Maria's fiancé, assuring him that she is alive and well, though still afflicted by the evil within her. Later, while searching Maria's room for answers, the priest uncovers the missing page, bearing the portrait of Elizabetha. Meanwhile, Jonathan's curiosity gets the better of him. Late into the night, he slips from his quarters, drawn to a faint light beyond a door. He descends a winding staircase into an opulent yet eerie basement. At its center lies a coffin. When Jonathan opens it, he recoils in horror. Dracula is inside, sleeping. "You should not have left your room," the Count growls, moments before a gargoyle strikes Jonathan unconscious. When he awakens, Jonathan is chained, suspended upside down as the gargoyles restrain him. Dracula slashes his neck, letting his blood trickle into a waiting bowl. Dazed and trembling, Jonathan asks how God could allow such a monster to exist. Dracula only laughs, the sound echoing with dreadful mirth, and asks what Jonathan's final wish might be. Summoning his courage, Jonathan requests to hear Dracula's story. Amused, the Count signals the gargoyles to release him. Then, with a gaze lost to memory, Dracula begins to speak, recounting the grief and rage that consumed him on the day of Elizabetha's funeral. Dracula reveals that he has endured centuries in mourning, waiting for Elizabetha's return, for he believes that pure souls are destined to reincarnate. Yet the search has been torturous. During the Black Plague, half the women of Europe perished, while the rest sought refuge in holy places where he could not tread. Isolated and tormented, he grew so lonely that he envied mankind for their mortal release. Once, in the depths of his despair, he lay down upon Elizabetha's grave and slept. At dawn, overcome by anguish, he hurled himself from a window, hoping to end his suffering. But death refused him. Again and again he tried, and each time he survived. Immortality had become his prison. Realizing he could not scour the entire earth alone, Dracula devised a plan to draw Elizabetha's soul back to him. Over the span of a century, he perfected a fragrance distilled from rare, enchanted blossoms gathered from the greatest gardens in the world. When he first tested it in Italy, women flocked to him instantly. Its power grew so immense that at grand parties he could make entire crowds dance in flawless unison beneath his will. In Versailles, he thought at last he had found her. But when he reached for the woman he believed was Elizabetha, he saw only a stranger's face. Heartbroken, he wept. For the first time, he realized that he had surrounded himself with endless nights of revelry, intoxication, and decadence, but never true love. In that moment of despair, he abandoned the search himself. Instead, he chose to create others who would seek for him. At a glittering party, he unleashed his hunger, biting every woman in the hall, binding them to his curse. Among them was Maria. After his rampage, Dracula returned to Elizabetha's grave. Shattering the coffin with his fists, he found nothing but ashes. The sight drove him into a frenzy of despair, and in his grief he vowed never to leave the castle again. From then on, his gargoyles would fetch him wealth and serve his every command, while his vampire progeny scoured the world for Elizabetha's reborn soul. In the present, Jonathan, still trembling, tells Dracula that he understands such devotion. He too is engaged. From his locket, he shows a picture of his beloved, Mina. The Count takes it in his hands, and his expression changes. Overwhelmed, he recognizes her instantly. Elizabetha returned. Moved beyond rage or hunger, Dracula spares Jonathan's life. He summons his gargoyles, ordering them to bring him blood in abundance. He must regain his beauty before meeting Elizabetha again. Meanwhile in Paris, the priest presents Dumont with the missing portrait, insisting they must find the woman it depicts if they hope to capture Dracula. He reads aloud from a sacred text, "When a man blasphemes, God may deny him death. Yet, should true repentance occur, the curse may be lifted, and with Dracula's death, every vampire he created would return to humanity." At that moment, Simon enters and spots the portrait. He hesitates, then reveals there is a woman in the visitor's area who looks exactly like it. Alarmed, Dumont and the priest rush to the parlor, where they meet Mina. She explains that she is a close friend of Maria's. They met only days ago at a party, and Maria had clung to her ever since. Though Maria seemed kind at first, she became unhinged at the wedding when confronted by the bishop. Mina confesses something else, her voice trembling. She feels as though she doesn't belong to this age at all. At times, even the thought of her own wedding fills her with doubt, as if her destiny lies somewhere far older and far darker. At the abbey, Dracula arrives in the guise of a ragged beggar. The compassionate nuns welcome him in, but the moment he steps inside the chapel, his disguise dissolves. Producing his enchanted fragrance, he sprays it upon the crucified figure of Christ. The scent spreads through the halls, drawing the sisters in a frenzy. One by one, the nuns collapse to their knees, overcome with unnatural desire, and soon they swarm around Dracula in a desperate heap. Without hesitation, he feeds upon them, reveling in their submission. Far away in the castle, Jonathan seizes his chance for escape. Alone in his chamber, he casts a blanket over a set of tools, dragging them close enough to shatter his chains. A gargoyle bursts in as Jonathan climbs through the window, slashing the blanket and nearly sending him plummeting. He clings to the icy wall, but the creatures jab through narrow slits, trying to pry him loose. One strikes him with a hook, and Jonathan crashes down onto the snow, sliding until he lands on the surface of a frozen lake. A gargoyle pursues, but as it lands, the ice cracks, swallowing it whole. The others hesitate, unwilling to follow. Jonathan realizes their fear and, trembling, begins to walk away across the endless white. Meanwhile, Dracula arrives at the psychiatric clinic, his youth and vigor restored. With a mere whiff of his perfume, he seizes Simon's will and has him lead the way to Maria's chamber. There, Maria eagerly tells him she has found Elizabetha. Pleased, Dracula rewards her by letting her feed upon Simon's blood. At dawn, the priest pores over his texts and discovers an old image of Vlad himself. But his work is interrupted when he is summoned urgently to the clinic. Dumont informs him that Maria has vanished, and Simon, now turned, has been bound to a bed, writhing as a fledgling vampire. The priest examines Simon's restrained body and notices his newly grown fangs, along with the powerful fragrance clinging to his clothes. When Dumont describes the mysterious intruder who took Maria, the priest realizes with dread that Mina is now in danger. At the boarding house, Mina answers a knock at the door and is stunned to see Maria, healthy and radiant. Maria claims Dumont discharged her and insists she has a friend eager to meet Mina. Persuasive and insistent, she helps Mina change into finer clothes before leading her to a hotel. There, Dracula waits. The moment he sees Mina's face, Dracula is overcome with tears. He showers her with lavish compliments, then bends to kiss her hand. At his touch, Mina is seized by a vision, fragments of a life with him long ago. Startled, she withdraws her hand, and Maria quickly whisks her away to enjoy the city festival. Dracula follows discreetly as the women wander through the festivities, tasting food and wine, laughing at sideshow games, marveling at a grotesque mermaid, petting animals. Their laughter drifts through the night until they enter a haunted house. Inside, the darkness separates them. Mina, alone, screams when a skeletal puppet lunges at her. In an instant, Dracula is at her side, guiding her out. Later, at a shooting booth, he steps behind her, steadying her arms. In his embrace, Mina is struck by another vision, flashes of the past that feel achingly real. As the night deepens, Dracula invites them to rest in his hotel suite until the fireworks begin. In the quiet, he and Mina talk. He produces a small music box and winds it. The delicate melody drifts through the air, unlocking a flood of memories in her mind. For a moment, she is Elizabetha again. Gasping, she recoils, accusing him of casting a spell upon her. Dracula pleads, speaking of Elizabetha and his centuries of waiting, but Mina insists she is only herself. At last, he places the music box in her hands as a gift. Moments later, Maria sweeps her away once more, eager to watch the fireworks blaze against the night sky. At the end of the night, Dracula walks Mina home, leaving her with a radiant smile. But her joy quickly turns to shock when she finds the priest and Dumont tending to a weak and fevered Jonathan in the living room. The priest explains the terrible events that befell her fiancé, but Mina refuses to believe that Dracula could truly be cruel. The priest is forced to reveal the truth. Dracula is a vampire who feeds on human blood and uses his enchanted perfume to control his victims. He examines Mina's neck, relieved to find no bite marks. Overwhelmed, Mina retreats to her room to cry, clutching the music box. Visions of Elizabetha flood her mind, only breaking when Dracula silently appears at her side. Startled, Mina demands that he leave. Dracula moves toward the window to obey, but Mina, unaware of his powers, fears he might harm himself and stops him. Anguished and accusatory, she confronts him about deception. Dracula reassures her, insisting he has never used the perfume on her and dramatically casts the bottle into the fire. When Mina confronts him about blood, Dracula admits it is his nature but swears she will never be his victim. Her nose begins to bleed, and in a moment of intimacy, he gathers the drops with his fingers and tastes them. Taking her hand, he speaks tenderly, and the visions of her past life return with vivid intensity. Hearing his final words to Elizabetha, Mina finally accepts the memories as her own. She whispers that Dracula is her love and presses her lips to his. Their passion ignites, and Mina, consumed by desire, asks for immortality. In response, Dracula bites her, beginning her transformation. At that moment, the priest catches the scent of the same perfume he had detected in the hospital. Realizing Dracula is in the house, he grabs a gun and rushes to Mina's room, only to find it empty. Panicked, the priest and Dumont conclude that Dracula must have taken Mina back to his castle. Jonathan, still recovering, insists on guiding them there. Meanwhile, Maria finally reunites with Henry, feigning affection to distract him. Just as she prepares to strike, the priest and his group intervene. Enraged, Maria roars and lunges at them, but the priest fires his weapon, striking her down. She recovers swiftly, knocking Henry to the ground and seizing the priest, intent on killing him. Jonathan spots a sword mounted on the wall and grabs it. With one swift strike, he decapitates Maria. Her head flies through the air, hitting Diant, while her body continues to choke the priest until it collapses. Still trembling with unholy life, the priest drives a crucifix into her heart, ensuring she is destroyed once and for all. In Romania, servants deliver a coffin to the castle. Dracula and Mina emerge, and he gives her a sweeping tour of the sprawling fortress. After meeting the gargoyles, Mina plays the music from the box and dons Elizabetha's elegant dress, feeling a deep connection to the past. At the castle gate, the priest's forces arrive with soldiers. They wait for the servants to leave, then rush forward, holding the gate open. Cannons roar from the forest, and soldiers fire upon the front doors, causing chunks of the castle walls to crumble. Panic grips Mina as cannonballs shatter ceilings and walls. Dracula orders her to stay inside while he steps out to confront the invaders. The gargoyles descend to engage the army, taking down soldier after soldier with terrifying precision. But the humans vastly outnumber them, steadily advancing into the castle. Jonathan leads his allies to the basement for safety while soldiers sweep the upper floors. Mina, seeing them approaching, locks herself in her chamber, heart pounding. In the basement, the soldiers fire upon the coffin. From behind, Dracula appears, knocking Jonathan unconscious. His voice, cold and unforgiving, calls Jonathan ungrateful, a reminder of the peril and power contained within the castle walls. Dracula moves with lethal grace, sword flashing as he weaves through the soldiers, striking them down one by one. Reinforcements arrive, but he dispatches them just as swiftly. Amid the chaos, Henry seizes the moment, firing 2 guns at Dracula simultaneously, but the bullets have no effect. With a predatory leap, Dracula lands on him and sinks his fangs into Henry's neck. With a flick of his hand, Dracula slams the doors shut, halting the arrival of more soldiers, and pins the priest at sword point. The priest speaks calmly, telling Dracula that God never intended for him to kill in his name, that human life is not to be destroyed for divine ends. When the priest claims he was sent to save Dracula, the count counters that his only salvation lies with Mina. The priest warns that, instead, Dracula will be her damnation. Hearing Mina's screams from her chamber, Dracula calls upon his gargoyles to buy him time. As they clash with the soldiers in the hall, Dracula clears the castle quarter, leaving none alive. He bursts into Mina's room, sweeping her into his arms. The priest attempts to follow, but Dracula locks the door. Yet the priest reminds him that true love requires sacrifice. Ignoring Mina's desperate pleas, Dracula leaves her locked inside and stands against the door. The priest, guided by his faith, drives a stake through Dracula's heart, ending the immortal life of the count. In her grief, Mina pulls him close one last time, sharing a final embrace before Dracula turns to ashes. As his life ends, the castle plunges into darkness. The gargoyles, once monstrous, transform back into human children. Jonathan arrives, finding Mina weeping over the ashes, which slowly drift away on the wind. Heartbroken, he walks away, realizing the love he lost can never return. Outside the castle, Dracula's ashes scatter into the night, carried away by the wind, a haunting testament to a tragic, eternal love. Please like and subscribe for more video like this. Thanks for watching.